YouTube channel Make Science Easy with Dr. KMC. Today we are going to see an interesting information about the nature. The nature I mean here is the forest. To be more precise, I would like to talk something about the Western Ghats and its development. The Western Ghats is the seventh largest country of the India, which having a resources of Himalaya, Western Ghats, Eastern Ghats, having a stretch of lands. The Himalaya is 2500 km east-west and 400 to 600 km wide here. And according to the Champion and Seth, there are 16 major forest types and 221 minor forest types are in India. That's why India is proclaimed as one of the hotspot and the world heritage in terms of the natural resources. So the total forest area is 75.18 million hectares. In India, in the tropical origin, which is a boon to have 45,000 plant species, of which 15,000 are flowering plants, 64 are gymnosperms, 1,022 are ferns, 2,584 bryophytes, 2,500 algae, 23,000 fungus, 16,000 lichen, and more than millions we can say that bacteria. The Western Ghats. The Western Ghats is one of the 18 mega diversity centers in the world, and these Western Ghats originate from Gujarat in north and ends in Kanyakumari, which a total length of nearly 1,600 kilometers and an area of 1,60,000 square kilometers. The highest peak south of Western Ghats is Anamudi, 2,695 at MSL. These Western Ghats have a 40 kilometer wide gap separating the Nilgiris and Annamalais. So gap is there. And then high altitude mountains of Western Ghats situated in the southern India is the Coorg 1500 meter, Nilgiris 2400 meter, Annamalais 2300 meter, and then Palani Hills 2350, and then Agastya Malai 1689 meters above the ground level. So these are all the high altitude mountains in which the Nilgiris having the highest peak, called as the Tottapetta, is situated in the Nilgiris. So the Western Ghats area is one of the world's 10 hottest biodiversity hotspots, and then again it has 7,402 species of the flowering plants, 1,814 species of the non-flowering plants, 189 mammal species, 508 bird species, 179 amphibian species, 6,000 insect species, and 290 freshwater fish species, and then many undiscovered species are still in the Western Ghats. So this is the recent statistics of the biodiversity resources in the Western Ghats, which is supposed to be called as the biodiversity hotspot. So at least 325 globally threatened species occur in the Western Ghats because of the human interaction on this. So of the 7,402 species of the flowering plants occurring in the Western Ghats, nearly 5,588 species are native and then indigenous to our area, and 376 are the exotic of the naturalized, later become. 1,438 species are cultivated or planted as ornamentals. Among the indigenous species, 2,253 species are endemic to India and 1,273 species are exclusively confined to the Western Ghats. That's why Western Ghats we used to say that it is a high endemism in the plant the occurrence. So apart from the 593 confirmed subspecies and varieties, 66 species and 5 subspecies and 14 varieties of doubtful occurrence amounting to nearly 8,080 the taxa of the flowering plants in the Western Ghats. In India, and as far as the scenario of subcontinent here, 60 families are monotypic. In the 60 families, 130 families are primitive total, and then which including and Magnoliaceae, Aronaceae, Myrtaceae, Laraceae and the Chloranthaceae. So these are some of the 10 largest families altogether in India, and again I can say that it's major occupied in the Western Ghats region. It starts from the Poaceae to the Scarpulariaceae. And then families with high endemism, as I mentioned earlier, there are some species which are endemic, confined to only the Indian, the tropical region, which belongs to the Laraceae, Embletheae, the Ranunculaceae, Rosaceae, Balsaminaceae, Acanthaceae, Liliaceae, and then the Frenulaceae. So these are some of the families, and how many species are occurred in each family types of the 8, and then endemic how much. So these are the high endemism having the species occurrence. And then here the Nilgiris and Agastya Malai are the two hotspots of the endemics in the Western Ghats. So here the Nilgiris having 3,500 species, out of the 3,592 are endemics confined to only in Nilgiris. In the Anamalai, the peak nearly 1,800 species, 58 are endemic to Anamalai, the region. And then the Palani Hills, a part of the Kodaikanal, and we have nearly 2,370 species, of which 65 are endemics. So the Agastya Malai, nearly 2,000 species, in that region 189 endemics, and 75% of the endemism are confined only to Western Ghats. So such a variety or variability in terms of the biodiversity is there in the Western Ghats. And in here picture you can show that what are the birds, the biodiversity hotspots, and then you can see in the other side you can see that Western Ghats have been situated in the west part of our Indian subcontinent, starting from Gujarat and ending to Kanyakumari. You can see that. So what is the types of mammals and species composition in the mammals? Nearly 139 mammal species are there in the Western Ghats, and then out of that 16 endemic mammals and 13 are threatened. Among the 32 threatened species, we have the critically endangered, the Malabar large spotted civet, then endangered lion-tailed the mosquito picture you can see in the right side, and then of course we have Nilgiri tahr, Bengal tiger, Indian elephants, and then vulnerable Indian leopards and so on. So Nilgiri tahr is also, and Nilgiri gaur is also there. Come to the reptiles. So major population of the snake, the family we called as the Peltidae is restricted to this region, and then several endemic reptile, the can, turtle, lizards are here, and then of course the snakes. The snakes are all the venomous snakes, striped coral snake, and then Malabar, the pit, the viper, and then large scale the pit viper, and the horseshoe pit viper are common in this Western Ghats region, including the mugger, the crocodile. So come to the bird population here. Nearly we have 508 number of the bird species. Out of the 508 bird species, 500 species are located in the Western Ghats of the Karnataka region, and 16 species of the birds are endemic in the Western Ghats. Then come to the picture of the insects. Nearly we have 6,000 insect species. Out of that, 334 are in the Western Ghats butterfly species. That's why we have a exclusive Western Ghats, the butterfly park, have been established by the Ministry of the environment and forest and climate change. So here 316 species have been reported from the Nilgiri Biosphere Reserve itself. So the lot of the species composition there with reference to the birds and the insect species. So all these resources in terms of the flora and fauna are enriched in the Western Ghats. So what is, as a human, the citizen of the India, what is our role here? So what is the strategy to be adopted for the development of the Western Ghats against the so many barriers or threat barriers in the Western Ghats? So here the protection of the ecosystem of this region within the framework for the overall development of the natural resources and the people in the Western Ghats. That is the paramount of the main strategy. And then number two is the procurement of the benefits arising from the development for the people of this region in the all districts from all states from the Gujarat to Tamil Nadu. And then the impact of the development activities in the adjacent regions in the shape of the migration of people, the demand for exploitation of raw materials and harnessing the water and energy is one of the strategy for the development. And then the competing demands by different states and nasal regions for the exploitable resources of the Western Ghats. So Western Ghats is is the region, it feed to all the people demands of the various states in the India. So what needs the objectives of the conservation of the plant resources for the development of the Western Ghats? So number one, to maintain the ecological balance in the Western Ghats. So which is very, very essential for the life support system of the Indian subcontinent, number one. Number two, to preserve the genetic resources. As I mentioned, we have wealthy resources of both flora, fauna, and I think how to preserve all those things in the hotspot of the Western Ghats region. That is paramount. And then to restore the ecological damage caused by the human interaction. As I mentioned, there are so many the factors which are leads to the invasion of the human interference in the forest. And then lastly, to create awareness among the people and educate them on the far-reaching implications of the ecological degradation and to enlist their active participation in the development schemes and then the various programs. So these are the main objectives of the conservation, how to conserve our plant resources in the Western Ghats for further development. So what is the general characteristic and development strategy? So for all these things, what it provides now, adequate employment and income for its population, naturally, and then conserve its resources, prevent or regulate the onslaughts on forest, we have to, then minerals, then vegetation and general landscape, and promote the development of the region on sound, self-sustaining and ecologically the balanced the basis. That's why we used to say that these ecosystems should be protected for want of the general in terms of the restoration and then for the homeostasis of the environment. So how many people, as per the census of the 2001, the population studies, I think we have a density of the Western Ghats 77% per kilometer in the Goa region and 382 in the Kerala, and then these are the figures which says. So in addition to that, nearly 32.7 million people are living in the 14,000 settlements. So when talk about the settlements, I think you can see the order here: Maharashtra, Karnataka, Tamil Nadu, Kerala and Goa. So these are the settlements. So here the settlements varies from 930 persons in area of nearly 4.2 kilometers square in Karnataka is high, and then in the high picture is occurred in the Kerala having 18,590 persons spread over an area of 27.8 kilometers square in the Kerala. So these are the actual the distribution of the natural habitation of the people. So these people, I think this picture will show you the information about it, what are the various states where the Western Ghats are occupying, the population in millions, and how many settlements are, as I mentioned earlier, and that average number of persons per settlements. So altogether average area of the settlements in the square kilometers area. So as a total nearly 32.67 millions the people are inhabited in the Western Ghats region, and then we have nearly 14,000 settlements, and in every settlement an average 2,330 are inhabited in the square kilometer of the 7 kilometers square. So urbanization is widespread here, and then the class-wise distribution of the urban centers are mentioned here with reference to the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 up to 6 levels. So total of the Western Ghats, we have the number of towns and the each population sizes classified mentioned here. And I think all these things, Tamil Nadu has maximum 50 towns, and then followed by the Karnataka 44, and then Maharashtra 48, and Kerala 24, Goa 3. So this picture shows the distribution of the urban settlements in the Western Ghats region, and then it's served by how many number of taluks, and served for the urban settlements, and then divide of the urban settlements altogether in Maharashtra, Karnataka, Goa, Tamil Nadu, and Kerala of the 5 states. So come to the picture of the economy. So in all together the total economy of these the people, and then with reference to the various states, they mentioned that how the percentage of the main workers too, as they mentioned in the occupation structure, I think you could see that almost it is the same. Nearly 32, maximum 36, all in between in the different regions of the states, in reference to the percentage of agriculture workers. So these are some of the indicators. So this is the status of the economics in the Western Ghats with reference to the population growth, sex ratio, literacy ratio, and then the participation ratio, and then percentage of the workforce in agriculture, net sown area, and then the percentage cover in the all area, cultivated, non-cultivated, and then consumption of the electricity, industrial sector. So I think the total scenario of the economic status of the Western Ghats have been given in the Western Ghats region, surrounded states. So next is what is the administration of the forest. So vis-a-vis people's rights. So legally, forest lands are under the control of the government, and then in some ways communities and organizations or individuals. And during the British period, it is totally under the management of the revenue, the department. Later, the ownership control has been given to some part of the has been under the control of the Zamindars in the Madras Presidency. So late after that, under the Indian Forest Act, under the control of the Forest Department as per the European forestry standards, we have been converted into most of the forest into the under the government control. So during the British period, all the original forest, cleared forest lands for the settlement of the agriculture, forestry, agroforestry, or the plantation forestry for want of their products. So then forest under revenue department used for the conversion into agricultural land for the agricultural activities suit to the need of the population in and around the Western Ghats region. And late after 1950, the forest lands under the management control of the forest department is grown manifold, and then distribution to the landless and settlements encroached by the all the people. Revenue department that created the serious problems in the field later. So these are some of the records of the forest area in between 1951 and late after 2000, the area periods of these years, and you could see that almost the same of that one, the record from the Dehradun. And so next, what are the various changes occurred? We mean that qualitative changes. The qualitative changes in the forest cover mainly because of the government policies Most of the area been extended for agriculture into new areas including forests, and then later established a large public sector infrastructural projects in the Nehru period, and then legal and illegal use of the forest lands, and then also by the increasing biotic pressure. So what it leads to, the management control of the forest department was increasing, and then actual forest cover was receding very fast in the country. So India in 2003 assessment, in the beginning of the 2000, 55.13 million hectares of the forest lands with cover 70% the ground the density, and then 33.93 million hectares with 40 to 70% density, and then 28.78 million hectares with 10 to 40% of the ground cover and million hectares of the survey area. So these are the forest area, all these things which brings normally rain to the all the 5 states. So we call it as the dense forest, or otherwise called the climatic climax of the forest cover is the classification. So this picture shows the changes in the dense forest coverage in India. So I think you can see so altogether it has been now 39.05 million hectares of the land have been having the forest cover in the India. So the classification and what the people's rights in the forest, there are 3 types of the forest under the Indian Forest Act. It has been designed in the 1927. We have the forest area as reserve forest, and we have the village forest, and then we have the protected forest. So these are the classification of the forested area, and village forests are those which comes again the RF, the reserve forest, the assignment to the village communities for the management. So this leads to what the 2 conclusions. One, the reserve forest and then the protected forest is mainly managed by the government as of now. And then legally speaking, only 2 types of notified forest, reserve forest and the protected forest currently in usage. So here the reserve forest towards high levels of conservancy, because government is involved in that under the control, and then I think in the NF, this PF, unless it is specifically prohibited, whereas nothing is allowed in RF unless specifically permitted. So the general principle of the British period, the RF areas, the reserve forest areas are further from the inhabitations, and the local population as least dependents are notified as the reserve forest area. And then the protected forest areas with the local people have high dependence for their day-to-day the live and then livelihood, which has been later notified as the PF during the British period. So this is the purpose. So the management plans with 2 streams is a commercial management of RFS for the protection of the large timber, and then the subsidence, the management of the PF, the protected forest, protective forest, mainly for the protection of the small wood, firewood, which are needs for the local people. So here, exclusion of the people from the RF areas, the quality of the forest in PF is deteriorated rapidly compared to between the 2 forest types. So therefore, many state forest departments have been preserved the PFs and the UF as the RF. So it's the rights of the people over the forest produce, not changed in the legal sense. So enlisting participation of the local people in general management and harnessing the assigned areas are so such shifts because of the revenue orientation of the government. So here the shift to more areas of the village forest for management, and then it causes the hindrance significantly. So what is the people needs? So the people needs, that means the goods and services from the forest. So the forest and logging, that is 1.1%, and then for the GDP contribution to the agriculture from this 20.7%. So Indian GDP for both sectors has later it declined slightly from 1982. So then, and mainly because of the percentage drop in the forestry and logging practices. So here the GDP contributions have been almost double the rate of the for the agriculture, because of the forestry and the logging, it happens in between 0.48 to 2.97 percentage of the GDP at the current values in some of the states. So the NTFP mainly for the PLO, the program which form the nutrition and irrigation, the disease and storm protection, the maintenance of the aquifers, and then the hydrology of the area, carbon sequestration, aesthetic values, and soil stability on steep slopes, and hardly over measured for the GDP assessment. So we have taken all the parameters of the developments which are occur in the Western Ghats taken for the criteria, and then PLO trade, ecotourism, and carbon sequestration, and then forestry GDP. So altogether now this share from nearly 1.07 to 2.4 percentage of the GDP in the national level with reference to the national forestry policy. So this Western Ghats supposed to be a center for the food security. Here the food security is the outcome of complex interactions among the natural resource management and political, social and economic factors. So forest an important element within this matrix for the food security of the 5 states, and later affect the food security in 3 major areas: agriculture and fisheries, forest floods, and then potable the water. Come to the agriculture, forests for sustaining the agriculture productivity in so many states, and moisture and nutrient leaching, they mainly to maintain the fertility of the agriculture fields are from the sources of the Western Ghats in terms of the river flow and then steaming and everything. So somewhere the wind breaks and shelter places to protect the crops from the drying and damaging the vents. Of course we have, and then heavy fauna to control the rodent and insect species. So here the chief source of the tree fodder for feeding the livestock sources of the biodiversity are from the forest as the sources. Then next is the fisheries. So here the rivers and streams, fishing grounds for the local populations. So it provides a shadow riparian the environment favorable for the development of the smaller life forms which feeds on that. So these are all the one, and in addition to that, in some area of the Western Ghats has been also having the marine occupied the inhabitants, that the fish species, and especially streams, there's also having a lot of resources. Then in addition to that, Western Ghats is a center for the forest food. So in the forest foods it means the important mainly for the local villages, including the tribal villages, both the stress and the normal periods, like leafy vegetables, mushroom, berries, and fruits, and then other minor the products from the Western Ghats. So these are the rich source of the vitamins and minerals, and ultimately it needs to the population of the 5 states. So lot of the wild fruits are, as I mentioned, rich in the vitamin A and C for mango, and then also the deciduous jungle we have the jujube species, and then so the lot of even the bamboo shoot is supposed to be having the high content of the carbohydrate, and which all together I think it fulfill the needs of the food for sustaining the livelihoods of the 5 states in the Tamil Nadu in India. And in addition to that, potable water, and many of the forested area as the source of the water, and I think is flowing both way, and western side and then also the eastern sides to that, and normally we used to store all those things in water. So now the water coming from the bamboo are supposed to be the sweeter and softer in the Western Ghats, so people are still using that one. And in addition to that, we have the cash income from the non-timber forest products. So nearly 23 the forest non-timber forest products we call the NTFP items are traded in the rural weekly markets adjacent the Western Ghats villages and towns. So which gives also the annual income for the livelihood of the people with sharing again in this forest area. And Tamarind, Magua also having the high income among the dwellers of this region. So the timber Of course, in early before 80s, we have the timber. I mean demand we have extracted from the Western Ghats. Now it is prohibited. So now that's why we have changed our forest policy after 1988. So the import of the timber mainly from Malaysia, Myanmar, Indonesia, China, and Nigeria has been increased manifold during this period, partly due to a high the demand for the local needs. So in addition to that, we have also have a high resources of the fodder from the forest area. So in India, the fodder for animals comes from only five sources. One is the crop residues, and then fodder grown on the grasslands and grazing lands, and then grazing on fields which are lying fallow during the dry season, fodder produced from trees and from the forest trees, and then grains and other high quality. So altogether, these are all have been taken as a requirement, and as per the statistics, India meet nearly 30% of the fodder requirements through the from the grazing the facilities in the forest only. Fuel wood, of course. So only now it has been according to the new forest policy, the collection from the fuel wood is have been restricted, and then they have changed the new strategy for that. But firewood would be continued to be used as it is the least expensive fuel, and with consistent cultural patterns and living habitats, socially acceptable and responsive to low inputs and low maintenance. And traditionally now the usage of the timber is limited, and only in the small scale industries and then other industry they are utilizing, and using of these the firewood from Western Ghats limited, and now people are all have been switched over to the gas mean the LPG based requirement, and then also the electricity based the cooking. And I think we have saved in the way by through the consumption of the fuel wood from the Western Ghats. And then what is the general needs of the urban population? So the urban households draw plant and animal products of the forest, and then contribution of the forest products decreases as the income levels of urban households increases. Many low income families depend on wood for fuel very near to the Western Ghats regions area, and then slum and marginalized communities in urban areas gathering fuel wood to generate the income, and that also now is a need, but it has been now restricted. And increasing the urban poverty temporarily increases demand for the low cost the forest products. And then we have the variety of the one expanding, growing the forest products. Tourism and recreation are used primarily by the urban population, and then the forest also provides ecological environmental services for the regional, national, and global importance. So this includes watershed protection, act as a sink filter for air pollution, emission, carbon sequestration, and considers the biodiversity, especially the forest ecosystem. Our past experience with this decentralized forest management, and then for the natural resources in terms of that. So we have adopted many the leads in the positive outcomes, which includes the variety of that one, and then we have also taken lead in the participatory process in the local forest management, and then these are the one. So of course 1970s and then 80s we adopted the social forestry movement gradually, and that we matured into joint forest management by 1990s. Then after 1990s we introduced the Tamil Nadu afforestation program, TAP program in Tamil Nadu, and so on, with the help of the Japanese government. So in addition to that, in the lot of the Western Ghats regions, by the involvement of the government, and then also a lot of these forest cooperative societies, the social forestry and wasteland management are the integral part of the rural development program in the country. They started again the National Wasteland Development Board 1985. They have started, and then afforestation of the tree planting with people's participation have been accelerated. In February 1986, tree growers cooperative societies were developed, and late after 2000 beginning, they started a Tamil Nadu afforestation project, in which the Village Forest Council (VFC) have been developed. So these are the various the types. So these are the various past experiences of the forest cooperative society in various villages. So of course we adopted early before 2005 adopted a major joint forest management for regularizing the optimum utilization of the forest resources as in terms of the forest fuel and then and the other the minor forest products etc. And I think this is one of the very successful program and developed by the forest department of the various states, and then they have the committees also in the joint forest management with the involvement of the local people, and then which also taken care of the participatory biodiversity conservation. So that is most important in the forest area. And then all these things we have the problem once we have the encroachment, fire, illegal cutting, all this in the Western Ghats. Now all have been checked, and lot of the council meetings with the involvement of the institutions, universities, and then colleges, and then NGOs, they have taken a lead role in the conservation of the biodiversity in terms of the register. Because the biodiversity, the register, and then so the people's participation in Tamil Nadu forest program is wide, and then it's been very, very, excellent the way they have made it. As I mentioned, the VFC, that is the households in the villages, or the members of the village forest council, they themselves taken a care about the conservation of the biodiversity in participation of the protection and the conservation aspect of the forest, and then they maintain the records also. It is called the register, biodiversity register. So the people's eagerness to put up the fire has been widespread. Get aware. So conserving and protecting the biodiversity of the forest was the prime importance of the people's participation in Tamil Nadu forest program they have adopted. So we have the many directions for the perspective plan for conserving the total biodiversity, and then all these have been mentioned here, and of course we have given the recommendations for the still further deterioration of the Western Ghats forest area. So what first they have recommended is the establishment of the institutional infrastructure for the democratic decentralization by creating clear and secure tenure over the forest resources to be decentralized. Then amendments should be made in the section 228 to accommodate all types of lands, not reserve forests only, for being eligible to be declared as the village forest. For constitution of the village forest council is most important now, very successful model, and then the government should develop a framework for creating the forest institutions at primary, secondary and tertiary levels across the whole country with an aim to increase the efficiency of the ongoing decentralization. And then the responsibility and the powers to manage the forest resources, most important, the government. The government should subordinate the objectives of the forestry management to accommodate the needs of the local people. So the forest mainly should be maintained as the public good over which the member of the respective democratic forest institution would have a equitable access. So altogether, the livelihood strategies of the members of the primitive tribal group should be properly incorporated in these plans, because they are the right one to have that all these access of the resources. So the government has to take a lead role. So the union government should oversee the decentralization process and provide the essential support, including capacity building to the democratic forestry institution at all levels to enable them to manage their own forest. So with this, I would like to thank you for the patient hearing, and in a overall conclude, I think I have projected what are the types of the forest in Western Ghats, the species composition with reference to the plants, and then to the animal, we call the flora and fauna, microorganisms, and etc. And what are the levels we have in India with reference to the types in Western Ghats, and then what are the factors that have been now deteriorating the Western Ghats, and what is the people's participation, and how to overcome all the barriers of the illegal factors, etc., that to be tackled, and then what are the councils we are required, and mainly the people's participation is very much essential to conserve the biodiversity resources of the Western Ghats. So with this, conserve our Western Ghats for the future and for the future generation in a sustained way. Thank you one and all for the patient hearing.